Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Postgame Live, presented by my bookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with my bookie. Well, perseverance, once again, the name of the game for the Eagles against these pesky Washington Commanders. Eagles get count them, four big second half touchdowns, 3 in the fourth quarter to capsize a 10-point halftime deficit. They hang on for the 38-31 win. They are now 7-1. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Caplan, and joining us as always all season long, former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. Fellas, I think we have to ask ourselves this question after watching that game. Was this just another typical Eagles Commanders game that doesn't follow the script? Or did we see something, anything there that might be a little bit of a cause for alarm as the Eagles go forward and really start to now enter the difficult part of their schedule? We'll talk about that. We'll break down the offense. We'll break down the defense. We'll even look ahead a little bit with Dallas coming up next. But I start with you, Adam. We said this in the pregame show. These games, we can do 10 hours of analysis, and then crap's going to happen in the game that nobody could have imagined, right? And it felt like that for a while. But in the end, the talent here won out. What did you see?
Yeah, so the first thing, I look at my notes, and they came out with a quick game to help negate the Eagles' pass rush. Because remember what Greg Cosell said in our pregame show. Howell couldn't move last week because they smothered him. The Giants blitzed, and he just couldn't drop back. So Washington knew this, so it was a quick game, get it out. That helped negate the pass rush. Eagles had coverage problems in the back end really throughout the game. They had all sorts of problems, particularly middle. The linebackers in coverage, safeties in coverage got beat. You saw Thomas's touchdown. Dotson had a big game. We talked about what's wrong with Jahan Dotson. Why isn't he doing well? Well, he sure did. They made plays late when they had to, but the defense did not play well today. I mean, Howell was incredible until he had a couple. I don't know what happened because it had nothing to do with the Eagles hitting them. The ball came up short. I don't know if it came out funny, but hey, as you said, they survived. They advanced. Somehow they won the game. Yet another slow start against Washington, just like the first game. I felt, though, because this is a throw ball game, it was as though Washington could not do anything against Hurts. Hurts was phenomenal, and the protection, for the most part, was pretty solid.
It was very solid. We will talk about that for both quarterbacks. In fact, Clay, let me shift the question to you. Was this a typical division game that is hard to predict, or did you see something from last week against a much more prolific offense? The Eagles held the Miami Dolphins to 10 offensive points. 7 days later, it's a completely different defensive look. So do you just say that's Eagles Commanders, or was there something that you thought going forward you got a little concerned about?
I think this is the fact that you're playing a team that you're very familiar with. As a player, the Dolphins have never played against that Eagles defense. They've never played against that Eagles team. So they're unfamiliar with what they're doing. They're unfamiliar with how these players play. Once you see a team twice the previous year, you see them 4 weeks ago, you kind of get used to playing against these guys. So everything they do isn't as strange to you. You're kind of used to it, and I wouldn't say numb to it, but you know what they do. You're not going to surprise anybody. You know these guys' moves. You know how it actually feels to block them. You know how it feels, what kind of sets you need to make, what kind of tempo you need to take on your block, on your routes. You've seen these guys, so the surprise is gone. So that's why you throw a lot of this stuff out the window. And then I think the Eagles were planning on, watching the Giants tape, getting some pressure with their front four, not having a blitz. And what we saw today was the blitz just didn't get to Sam Howell. And he was able to have a monster day. And the Eagles thought that they could get to him without blitzing with their front four, and that didn't happen. And I don't really think that they made an adjustment to start blitzing and trying to pressure Howell more, which is when you see he becomes ineffective, is when you get pressure on him. So in my opinion, I think they could have done more to get pressure. They thought the front four was going to be able to do it, but it couldn't. So that's why this was such a tough game for the defense.
Yeah, almost hard to explain why a Washington offensive line, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that gets beat up on the regular seems to always be able to hold up against the Eagles. And as you just remarked, 1 week after they couldn't even defend some simple ET or TT stunts against the Giants, they looked much better in protecting the quarterback against the Eagles, which again, it doesn't really seem logical, other than the fact that, hey, when you're not good at something, and you know the other team is, you probably work on that extra. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if defending stunts and holding up your blocks was a big key of emphasis this week for Washington.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, this is a historically bad offensive line. They're on pace to beat the Derek Carr sacks given up. The pace, that's how bad they are. But you're used to playing against this team. You know what they do. And I think that's, the Eagles thought for sure we're going to be able to get pressure with the front four, and they couldn't do it, and they didn't blitz, which I thought they could have. But obviously, you saw the Commanders come out, and they did some stuff to move the ball around. You saw a couple screens, a couple quick passes, and then they started going downhill. So one way to defeat that pass rush is get the ball out quick and to move laterally and to get them moving from side to side before you really start, throwing the ball downfield. And I thought they did a good job of that.
Excellent. All right, we're going to break down the Eagles offense, the Eagles defense. We'll go into the injury situation, some special teams, and a quick look ahead with the trade deadline coming upon us before we wrap it up. When your money's on the line, I got to tell you guys about MyBookie, as we always do. When your money is on the line, you have to choose a trusted sports book that gives you the tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. So use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Plus, MyBookie has a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quickly. All right, just use the promo code THEBIRDS, that's all one word, THEBIRDS, on your first deposit and receive up to $200 in cash. That's THEBIRDS, one word, all caps, THEBIRDS, to claim your own cash bonus now. Also, you got to try the MyBookie money bag to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and the Chiefs. All right, you're not going to find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. And not surprisingly, if the Chiefs win today, they'll only be 2 7-1 teams, the Eagles and the Chiefs. It feels like we're headed toward a crash course or collision course for a repeat Super Bowl, but there's a lot of time in between now and then. Let's work backwards. We usually start with the Eagles offense. I want to start with the Eagles defense and talk to you guys about some things that happened. Obviously, Kevin Byard made his debut today. So you saw it. We said that he had to play because the Eagles are just very thin at safety. You saw Kevin Byard play. You saw Reed Blankenship play. You saw Sidney Brown probably play more this game than he has all year as he continues to come back from the hamstring injury. And at times, I believe you saw a big nickel replace their traditional nickel and just one linebacker on the field. But obviously, Adam, the goal here for the Washington Commanders, which they succeeded for about 3 quarters, was to try to use the quick game and attack the interior of the Eagles defense. And it worked for 3 quarters.
That was what we saw in the first quarter. I mean, everything they did was quick game. As Clay talked about, screen game that worked. Quick pass, get it out of his hands, negate the pass rush. And by the way, you're right. The Eagles did start in big nickels. Brown did start with Byard and Blankenship. And they did what they've done really almost all season. Milton Williams technically started. He left the game with a shoulder injury, came back. That's his 3rd different injury of the season, but he did come back. They need him. He got a couple good pressures in the game. So look, they just could not get to Howell, boy. And you saw it in the first game where they got a lot more pressure. He stands and delivers, man. I got to give him credit. When they got close to him, he got rid of it. And they just could not get to him today. Whereas they got to Tua on Sunday night, they could not get to this guy.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely tip our cap to Sam Howell. We'll get to him in a second. Clay, I want to ask you about this sort of safety approach. And then I think I'm very curious when you watch the All-22 this week and you and Greg Cosell do Inside the Tape, because Greg always makes this point. We really haven't seen what Nakobe Dean looks like as a coverage linebacker. He not in Georgia, he blitzed a lot. He played great against the run, sideline to sideline, but not too many teams take the approach, right, that Washington just took against the Eagles, which is to try to spread out and quick game against linebackers and safeties. So what I'm really curious as, and just your insight in this game, Reed Blankenship gave up some yards. Sidney Brown in the slot gave up a 2nd and 16 touchdown to Jahan Dotson. That's not really where he played in college. And Nakobe Dean himself was caught, I think, in coverage a few times. So what are you expecting when you think you watch this All-22 you might see from that intermediary level of defense?
Yeah, I think the the Commanders did a good job of getting some linebacker matchups on a wide receiver, and Nakobe Dean did get beat a couple times. And to me, that's just the Commanders. You're not going to be able to have a linebacker guard a wide receiver in space. And, so I guess a few Roquan Smith or a couple guys that can do it. And I think Dean's guy athletic enough to do it. But today he did get beat. He's going to have to improve there. Blankenship got beat a couple times. Obviously, had that big interception. Sidney Brown didn't look comfortable. You saw the bunch switch release. I saw it a couple times. It looked like he might have taken the wrong guy, and you just kind of play off each other. But I don't think he looked comfortable in that slot position when there was that. The touchdown he gave up was the bunch switch release, and he played it way too far outside, kind of gave up the inside there, and just tons of space. Got lucky when Howell overthrew the receiver in the end zone on that other play. Could have been another touchdown. So I think there's some work to do there, and obviously want to watch the all-22. And the fact is they were probably counting on some more pressure. In 52 dropbacks to get one sack, we haven't charted the hurries or the hits yet, but there wasn't too many of those either. 52 passes, one sack, and that's not even until late in the fourth quarter. I don't care who you are. There was no pressure. You are not going to be able to guard these guys for that long. The Commanders have a nice receiving core. Logan Thomas is a nice tight end. So if you can't get pressure and you're giving them all day to throw, you got rookies out there, you got some young guys out there, they're going to find ways to get open and throw them the ball. And to touch on your big nickel comment, I think that's just, it's a game plan thing. You go in to the certain personnel groups, right?
Right.
So if they're bringing in, Logan Thomas or, this receiver, we're sending him in. So you kind of know what your personnel grouping is and who you're playing against. And it's just, they're doing that based on the personnel, who they think matches up with who.
Right. So I guess my follow-up, or what I would ask Sean Desai, if you're going to play big nickel because Washington came out with either the two tight ends, which they did with Bates and with Thomas, right? Or sometimes they had the fullback. If you're going to have a slot defender out of a 3 safety look, I thought we talked about in the pregame, Byard has experience as a slot corner.
Yeah.
Sidney Brown's does not. And that is not an ideal matchup, as we saw. I mean, maybe he thought he had safety help there. I don't know. I just saw a couple of times where he was, behind the action. I wonder what the thinking might have gone into to have Brown in the slot instead of Byard more, unless they were and alternated and you don't want to give a tell away. I don't know. It's just,
I would say it's because, he's just getting there. And, I think he's going to get more time as he comes along. I've done this twice, right? And when I was in Philly, I got released by Chip Kelly. You get released on Sunday, signed with the Jaguars on Tuesday, waiver wires. Mercedes Lewis goes down. I'm starting on Sunday. It's hard. You can do it as a veteran. It's hard. I'm on the field playing 30, 40 snaps, but you're not going to send them in all the personnel groupings unless you're in a really big jam. And I think they felt like Sidney Brown had been there for longer. He knows the defense better. Obviously, Bayard is the guy that's a vet, one of the best safeties in the league, and he can pick up a system. But I think they kind of just want to give him more time. And next week, after watching what we watched today, he's going to get a big role and it's probably going to be the guy that I would see playing that slot position moving forward.
Yeah, that would make sense. Adam, we talked in the pregame show, and Jason Avant and Greg Cosell said, hey, there's going to be blitzing. And there was. It wasn't, exotic type blitzing, not a whole lot of zeros. But I thought maybe in the first half, I think you even mentioned this, there was probably an opportunity to pressure. When you see that they're doing quick game, don't you want to try to speed up his clock a little bit, make the quick game even quicker and force some erratic throws? I thought maybe there were some opportunities just to throw one extra rusher in there, a 5-man rush down the A gap and sort of force the issue a little more.
Yeah, I mean, they got credit for 6 quarterback hits, but sure did seem like it. Reddick had that huge sack. Obviously, that was a huge one. But overall, yeah, when you drop back so much, you think you're going to get there. It's we'll see what the tape looks like. I was a little disappointed. By the way, Brown only really played slot in college when he followed tight end. He's really not a slot player.
Right.
He's a box safety. So it's Blankenship's going to be back farther. Brown's going to be up front. Now, how they're going to do it, how they do it from now on is interesting because, as we just said, they played big nickel today. They started the game off like that. We know that Byard's going to have to be a start with Blankenship, but are they going to stick with big nickel? How they're going to do this is going to be as Clay said, situational, but against the opponent. That we're going to learn very, very quickly. And the other thing that they need, as I mentioned earlier, I think we all saw it today. They got beat. Their coverages on the intermediate area was not good today. I just makes me wonder. I know they have good depth at the inside linebacker when everybody's healthy, but who's really the coverage linebacker? That's the question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I also thought Nick Morrow, who's done a decent job, and he certainly did a good job against Miami, especially in zone, taking the right kind of length in his drops and everything. It looked like he didn't play much until, because they were going big nickel a lot, it looked like he didn't play much until the second half. And the second half is when they started to play a little bit better defense. So I don't know. I think Sean Desai obviously has optionality at multiple positions now because of safety and linebacker, and he's just trying to figure out combinations that work well against specific looks. But I think it's fair to say, with the Cowboys up next, and they throw to CeeDee Lamb quite a bit throughout the middle, we know the Chiefs will work every area of the field. We know the San Francisco 49ers will work every area of the field. Buffalo too, with Dalton Kincaid now starting to come up for them, is that this is an area that we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks. How do the Eagles defend the middle of the field? Because again, you can go back to the Miami game and say, oh, they did a great job. But we mentioned that's a one read offense, and Tua really struggles to get to read 2 and 3. Some of these quarterbacks the Eagles are about to see aren't as locked into number one as Tua is. So and certainly Sam Howell did a good job today of finding guys in different parts of the field. So to me, it's something that we're going to look at over the next few weeks. And that's why I asked Clay earlier, like, is there something we take from this game, not just positive, but also a little bit of an alarm for what they've got coming up?
Yeah, no, and that's something I think they're going to figure out as Bayard gets more time in the system to pick up that system. His role is just going to increase and improve and increase. And obviously, each game plan is going to be different with each team. With these games coming up, it's going to change. And I think just with the Commanders' offensive line, they really thought they could take advantage of them, and I don't blame them for thinking that. And it's funny, you saw how the Commanders came out. Obviously, that's we're talking about offense here, but they came out blitzing pretty much every play. I mean, they are heating these guys up. But you saw the Eagles take a different approach. Even when they did blitz, they would drop, they would zone drop like Sweat or try to do something tricky to still have 7 guys in coverage and make sure they weren't losing a guy there. So to me, that was kind of the strategy I saw them take.
Yeah. Hey, Adam, you'll get an appreciation for this. Like, I'm watching this Sam Howell, right? And I'm thinking Sam Howell is the new Jay Cutler. Not Jay Cutler. I'm sorry. Jake Plummer is what I meant.
Oh,
do you remember when the Cardinals were in the same division as the Eagles and Plummer would give the Eagles fits just running around and making crazy plays?
Yeah, the snake. Yeah, he there's some similar. Howell's a little stockier, a little shorter, but yeah, I could see that. He's a scrambler. He's got quick feet. And he's just so courageous. He just stands back there and he takes pressure. I'll be interested to see what they do at quarterback, depending on if there's a coaching change. We know they have new ownership. And will they go forward next year with this kid? Because the big issue is what we talked about in the pregame is they have to rebuild their offensive line. It's embarrassing they're putting on a line like this. I give them credit today. They came with a different game plan because it wasn't working. Quick game, get it out, be smart, and it worked. And they caught the Eagles in some coverage busts too. The Eagles had some stuff that they could do better with. And by the way, so did Washington.
Yeah.
Washington, and by the way, AJ Brown. We need to mention this. AJ Brown set the record 6 straight games.
Yep. We'll get to the offense in a second. Yeah, AJ Brown was a Superman again today.
Yeah.
All right. Finishing off, one last point on defense is this. I don't know. Again, I want to see the all 22, but I felt like the Eagles didn't stunt as much as they normally do, and that was what gave Washington real issues against the Giants, some real simple ones. So look forward to, again, Clay and Greg Cosell breaking down the entire tape, the all 22, and using visuals like that. That was great. Little all 22 addition to the show. So everybody's got to check that out. It comes out on Thursday mornings on the Inside the Birds platform. And again, big hat tip to Sam Howell. He did an unbelievable job, and he's given the Eagles fits and probably something to think about as they go forward. All right, we're going to transition to now the Eagles offense against the defense. First, I want to remind everybody what we've been talking about, our new partners, HelloFresh, because they are saviors for us in the fall. Football's back. We're busy. We're going to work. We're traveling. We got to get our kids to school. I got youth sports. Yeah, who's got time to sit down and make an actual dinner during the fall season when we're at the busiest? That's why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There's no more wasting time at the grocery store because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy. No wasting time researching recipes, no planning meals. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done and the perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step with recipe cards. Can't get more efficient than that. Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. HelloFresh is 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a great home-cooked meal and you're not eating junk or digging deep into your wallet. Don't forget about taste and selection. They make food for meat lovers, seafood lovers, vegans, vegetarians, and just anybody who loves all of it. Variety. My personal favorite, the spicy Creole stew and the pecan crusted trout. Had them last week. They were fantastic. Sat down as a family for once at dinner and really enjoyed it. So go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the promo code 50Eagles. That's 50 Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh.com/50Eagles with the promo code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. You act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right. Speaking of eating, the Eagles offense, it took a little while, but they ate in the second half, especially through the air. I think the one thing that stood out, Adam, is there were times that Jalen Hurts could have made and prepared a HelloFresh meal in the pocket. You remember that time where he kind of ran and he climbed the pocket and then he ran to his right and then he actually wound up throwing it out of bounds. Nobody could get open, but that was sort of indicative of the amount of time that he had to throw in the second half. That became his best friend.
Think about it. They scored 38 points. They turned the ball over twice inside the 5-yard line.
It's amazing.
And I look at my notes here. I'm like, it was like a big exclamation point. Like, you got to be kidding. They moved the ball. Well, they didn't run it all that well, but they weren't. It was a throw ball game for both quarterbacks. The run had no significance. The game didn't matter because Washington, as you just alluded to, could not stop them. I felt like if they wanted to throw every down, they would have thrown for 500 yards. This is one of those where, okay, 1 out of every 10 passes, maybe they got close to Hurts a little bit. It didn't matter. Brown was amazing. We all were texting each other. Devontae Smith's usage for the first quarter and a half. I'm like,
who?
Exactly. Is he playing today? And then he made some big time catches. I like that. They missed on a couple screens, but it wound up not mattering. But the crazy story was, because I couldn't tell whether he's a tight end or he's a receiver. Julio Jones scored number 80. He's wearing a tight end number. He did score. Huge touchdown
from the slot on an RPO. That was fun to watch. Clay, as a pass catcher, which you were by trade as a tight end, right? I want to ask you not just about A.J. Brown's production, but there seems to be a demoralizing way that for the opponent that he catches touchdowns. Because, he catches touchdowns with 2 people on him. He catches touchdowns when there's defensive pass interference on him. He catches touchdowns on balls that look like they probably shouldn't find their way into his hands. And at the end, there he is plucking the ball. He's pretty special, I imagine. And just talk about that effect that you can have on a defense when you demoralize them with those catches.
I had a couple plays like that, but those plays I had were in high school, okay? You got the double team, you got the safety deep and a man press on you, and you still catch a touchdown? That was on my high school highlight tape. You're not supposed to be able to do that in the NFL. It's incredible. That's all I can say. There's not enough words for what this guy's been able to do. And I know the Eagles have been, they went through such a long period with so many average receivers, back in the day. And then you get obviously like T.O. for a year and then Deshaun, Macklin. But now to have A.J. Brown is just incredible. This guy's making one-handed catches, two-handed catches, double teams. You have perfect coverage on him. He makes a one-handed catch and scores a touchdown. The confidence that gives Jalen Hurts to know when you're double teamed and you can still throw this guy the ball. And hats off to Hurts for knowing some quarterbacks, they're going to look and say, okay, he's covered. Mm-hmm. But he knows and he trusts that he can put the ball in a place that if there is that little tight window, he gets it there, that A.J. Brown's going to come down with it. And he is. And he's on a historic pace. And, you got people now calling for MVP votes and stuff. I don't think it's that far off, to be honest. He has been obviously setting records. And today it was good to see Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown combining for 15 catches, 229 yards, 3 touchdowns, and just showing why, in my opinion, they are the best tandem. Sorry, Miami, we beat you guys. The best wide receiver tandem in the league.
Yeah, Adam, he is now, A.J. Brown stands alone in the history books as the only player in NFL history with 6 straight games of 125 yards. And you know what? All 4 of us in the pregame show said we thought he was going to do it. He did it. And again, there's a backbreaking nature of it. I mean, the first one was on who's 26? St. Just, right? So we talked about Washington's new sort of defense since the first time. They made Forbes. They kind of benched him. They still played him a little bit.
He got beat.
But
he also got
beat.
beat.
He got beat again on the second one.
Yeah.
But it's clear no matter who you put on AJ Brown, whether it's St. Just or Forbes, it's not really going to matter too much.
You saw this, Jeff, when you were training camp or maybe OTAs after the trade, and you see how he's rocked up. And you see it in this game, how the defenders are draped over him, but they fall off because he's so strong.
Right.
And you don't usually see receivers that physically strong, and just he outwills them too. And Clay talked about it, the willingness that Hurts has to throw the ball, even when he's covered, or the guy's close to him, he doesn't care. He's going to throw to him. It's pretty amazing, their chemistry. We know they're best friends off the field, but their chemistry is ridiculous, and that's clearly matters. I wasn't sure how much that would matter, but certainly matters, and they got the job done. It's pretty incredible what they're doing together. And just to close it out though, with couple nice plays by Kenny Gainwell. I know he had the awful fumble, but he had a couple nice catches when they needed it and when it mattered in the second half. That was good to see. You understand why he's in there, because he's a better pass protector, and Swift was a closer when they got the lead late. But this is a complete offense. They really are, and I give their offensive line credit. And don't forget, Sua Opeta left the game for a while, and then he came back in the second half. That's pretty good that he came back.
Yeah, we saw Tyler Steen get a few snaps in there, the rookie. So we talked about on defense, pass coverage across the middle might be something that we're looking at going forward as a little bit of a red flag, even in a win. Today, the Eagles turned the ball over twice. They now have 12 turnovers, I think, in 8 games, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe even more than that. Maybe it was Jalen who had 10 and 7, and he had a fumble again today on the tush push. Clay, they're going to play a lot of good teams coming up here. You got to win the turnover ratio, not lose it against these teams. And the Eagles have just been different this year with ball security. Jalen Hurts has been different, and the team in general has been different. And they don't take the ball away as nearly as much as they did last year. They did get a nice interception by Reed Blankenship. Forgot to mention that, by the way, that for a guy who got picked on earlier in the game, it was nice to see him come through with the interception there, which really turned the game on its axis. But speak to the turnovers here, because the Eagles work on this in practice and as much as anybody. They got, they're beating up the running backs with these weird, equipment things to make sure they don't fumble. They stress it, they emphasize it. But I think this is just, again, illustrative of how no matter how much you work on it, some of that is just sort of the way of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing. It's crazy to say, but there's really no way to really fix that or work on it. I mean, you do all the things in practice. You focus, you stress it. Take care of the ball. Take care of the ball. The tush push. Who does know that I couldn't tell if it was a center quarterback exchange, if Hurts got it knocked out, but I mean, that's not something you can just go in and fix. It's kind of a freak accident. And then obviously with Kenny Gainwell, inside he's kind of running with the ball in the wrong arm, going that maybe my only thing would be, why is your ball not in your left? And you can keep the defender away with your right, and you kind of create some space there so you're not fumbling the football. Right. But you're right, Jeff. You fumble the ball twice inside the 5-yard line, you still win a game. You're not going to be able to do that against a Dallas team that really put one on the Rams today. You're not going to be able to do that against a Chiefs team, defending champions. You're going to have to improve on that and just make sure that you clean those up, because you can get away with this with the Commanders, but you can't with those teams. And there's one thing I wanted to say about the protection. The protection was phenomenal, because you saw how much they were blitzing the Commanders early in the game, and they just weren't getting there. They weren't getting home. I can't wait to, have the clicker and the pointer in my hand and go through all 22 and really see who was picking up these blitzes, the running backs, the O-line, because they were sending a ton of blitzes, different blitzes. I mean, they were doing zone blitzes, man blitzes, and it really wasn't getting home. And obviously, a lot of it was Hurts is so good in the pocket, not just using his speed. Some guys are fast. Justin Fields, fast, but he doesn't have that pocket awareness like Jalen does. Jalen knows how to slide up in the pocket. Lane gets beat by Chase Young. He slides up, slides back. So he was so good at that, and he did a good job of helping his offensive line out too, from what I saw, and obviously see more on the All-22.
Yeah, good points there. So Julio Jones catches maybe the the biggest touchdown because it puts him ahead. And I think two things really stuck out about this, Adam. One is that it came on an RPO with him as the slot receiver, which is not an area where he has functioned a whole lot. And two, we sort of got grief from people when we said that this could be a big addition for them in the red zone. And people were like, oh, he's never really been a good red zone target. But, different coaching staff, different quarterback, different offense. And that was tailor-made for him to catch the ball. And you have to think the way they set that up, especially since he's not normally a slot receiver, is that they had that in the bag for that look that Washington gave him.
They clearly, obviously, they ran it in practice, and it worked to perfection. And that's just another addition, because look, their red zone offense has been disappointing up until recently. Obviously, the last couple games it's been really much better. Mm-hmm. But this is something that they could reach in their grab of their bag of tricks. And also Devontae Smith on that touchdown. How about him busted coverage? Danny Johnson didn't realize he was passing him off, and there was no one to pass him off to.
Yeah.
So and he was in the left slot. That'll count, obviously. But look, their offense is humming right now. That's you asked earlier to start the show. I'm not concerned at all about the offense anymore. Not at all. They've got it going on here. It's really defensively that they're giving up points. And yes, against Miami they were great, but this one, Washington twice, Minnesota also got them pretty good. Cousins had over 400. By the way, it sounds bad that it's probably his Achilles or Cousins.
Oh man, yikes! Anyway. Yeah, to your point, Adam, that's 69 points now in the last two games, right? Against some pretty good teams, and these are all offensive points too. Now, I don't think they had any defensive touchdowns in the last two games, so that's all offensive points. The offense is definitely humming at the moment.
For sure.
All right. Let's see. Was there one more thing? Oh, yeah, the run game. It just seems like this Washington defense, Clay, has the answer for the Eagles' run game, because the Eagles have struggled to run against them a couple of times.
Yeah, I think at one point, I thought I wrote it down somewhere, there was like 22 passes to one DeAndre Swift carry. And I mean, obviously, you're doing well in the pass game, you're getting some yards, you find yourself down, you don't want to run the ball as much, but I think you got to split that up a little bit more. And obviously you saw some Gainwell plays in there, but I think obviously want to watch the film, but in my opinion, I think that the D line for the Commanders, did a good job with all these talented players up there. They haven't been performing that great, but I think today they stepped up and did a good job against the run. They did against a tough offensive line too. So, I think that for whatever reason, if it's because of familiarity, that the blocking schemes, you kind of know what to expect. They did do a really nice job against the run.
Do you think we talked about this in the pregame show, and it was really a hard question to answer without seeing game one of everybody knowing Jalen Hurts has got a knee thing that he's dealing with, but they didn't run a whole lot. They're not running keepers, right? They're not running zone reads out of their RPOs. He's not running. Is that at all? I guess you're gonna have to watch all 22 on this, but in your opinion right now, do you think that might impact the run game going forward a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Instead of having to worry about a guy is dynamic as Jalen Hurts, you don't have to. And all right, that's 1 to 2 players you have to make sure is worried about him per play. You're taking 1 to 2 players out of a play every time just because of threat Jalen Hurts. I mean, last year we saw him have some huge games when he's healthy, huge games in that zone read, and he runs his own read. I've said this several times last year, better than any quarterback, hands down, that I've ever seen as far as his decision making. And obviously this year, I think we've talked about it, he just looks a step slower. We didn't know about the knee and the bone bruise and all the the injury stuff he had going on, but that's huge. They're a big zone read team, and that's one thing that Jalen Hurts will bring you, and that makes it more difficult. But the thing about Hurts is this guy can change, man. He can adapt and improvise and find different ways to beat you. He's a guy that can beat you from within the pocket. Obviously, we saw him extend some plays today and beat you that way too. And he wasn't just, but he is also a guy that the zone read is huge for him, and he's a guy that can run that better than anybody. So as far as the run game is concerned, I think that's a big part of why we haven't seen the big games so far since he's been having that knee injury.
Sure. Yeah, I imagine you'll be looking to see if those Commanders linebackers were shooting gaps and cheating toward the line of scrimmage, which you can't do when you're usually afraid of Jalen Hurts keeping it on the outside. So the All-22 will be able to reveal that a little more. All right, let's wrap this up. We'll talk a little bit about the injuries, the trade deadline here, and of course, Dallas Cowboys coming up next. First, I want to remind everybody about our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's pause real quick and hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you stop into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. We are back here on Inside the Birds Postgame Live. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, and of course, former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor, who does a great show with Greg Cosell on the Inside the Birds platform, but not Greg Cosell. His name is Clay Harbor. Let's talk about some of well, we mentioned some of the injuries. Milton Williams left. He came back, so that seems good. Grant Calcaterra, I've been forgetting to point this out. Calcaterra's been playing more lately when they go 12 personnel. I don't know if he has overtaken Jack Stoll as the tight end in 12, but I thought starting last week or maybe even the week before, Clay, I don't know if you noticed it, that you were starting to see Calcaterra and Goddard on the field a little bit more together when they go 12.
Yeah, Calcaterra to me is a little bit more dynamic, and Stoll hasn't been doing a great job blocking. When you're a guy that's specifically brought in for a role and you're not performing that role, it's not a good thing. And hey, I see how you get me and Greg Cosell mixed up, man. We look pretty similar. I mean, honestly, people confuse us all the time. Walking down the street, they're like, "Is that Greg Cosell?" Like, hey, man, I know. No, it's actually Clay Harbor, but I get that a lot. No, but all kidding aside, yeah, Jack Stoll. I like Stoll, but for whatever reason, I was going to point out a couple of these plays watching the tape where he just got murdered last week and the week before. And I'm like, Stoll's you're blocking tight end, you're not blocking. So to me, I'm not surprised to see Calcaterra get more snaps just because, Stoll hasn't been performing.
That's great stuff, Clay. I don't know if that's been brought to a lot of people's attention here in the market, that Jack Stoll, who was last year pretty good at that. I mean, Adam, that's why he's on the team.
Yeah.
Is because he's like their only true, blocking tight end,
And they're why. Yeah. So Calcaterra, by the way, suffered concussion. We know about his history with concussion, so let's hope he's okay. Right. Jalen Carter left. I did not see him come back after the back injury. So we'll learn more about that tomorrow. The Eagles, if Calcaterra is out for a little bit, they have Albert O, by the way, was inactive again. So they have the depth to withstand it, but he's really not a blocker. He's an athletic tight end. So that's a little bit of a blow to their depth. And next Sunday, they face a team that got after the Rams today. They knocked Stafford out of the game, and their defense was really, really strong. The Cowboys were against the Rams.
You can tell Nick that I'm ready to go too. If the tight ends hey man, I'll book my flight. I'm good to go, guys. So let them know that, hey, if you need an emergency tight end, then I'm ready to go. I remember the playbook, new playbook actually. So never mind.
Well, there's no Anthony Spencer to have to block anymore, but they've got this guy named DeMarcus Ware, Clay. I mean, not DeMarcus Ware. They've got this guy named Micah Parsons. Man, now I'm getting old and my memory is getting terrible. Micah Parsons is pretty tough to block too, though. So I don't know if you want that. If you want that smoke, we can tell Nick you're ready for it. No,
if we're doing one of those cut blocks, where you come back across the line, I can handle that. Just don't put me one-on-one in like a pass or a run game, but I can do a cutoff block maybe. But if you go over 10 plays, I think that's all I got for you.
There you go. You want to get downhill. I understand that. Yeah. Speaking of getting downhill, we saw a nice return from Britton Covey, 25 yards. That was came at a pivotal point in the game, so that was always good to see. As special teams, I suspect we'll talk like the return game, field goals. Great job by Jake Elliott again. That's going to come into play here real quick as we get into the tough part of the schedule. Adam, trade deadline. You think Washington, this loss will force them to want to unload?
Yeah, I wouldn't say forced, but because as we said in the pregame, both of the Stern DMs are unsigned. The belief around the league is they're going to keep one of them, try to at least re-sign one for next year. See, Chase Young's actually had a very good season despite all the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do you base a contract on when the guy's missed so much time? So he's an interesting free agent. Sweat's not the best rusher; he's better all-around player, but he doesn't have Chase's ability. Chase Young's a much more talented player. So yeah, they dropped to 3 and 5. See, I wonder if they could just build this offensive line. Howell's shown me enough. I know he's taken a lot of sacks, but he's shown a lot of ability here. This guy could play in this league. There's no question about that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Clay, if you were put your Howie Roseman hat on, and you have the opportunity to get yourself either a coverage linebacker on the trade market or a slot cornerback, where would you go?
I'd probably go with a slot cornerback, just because obviously that's been a factor that's been affecting the Birds. And I think that's harder to find if you can find one. And I know Howie's a guy that can, work some magic, some miracles, is finding that coverage linebacker. I also think that Nakobe Dean's going to get better. This is his first year of actually getting some play time. I think Nick Morrow is a guy that can play and can do decent in that role. So I think those guys, if you put them in a little bit better situations, can get the job done. But slot corner, I'm worried about, seeing what happened with Sidney Brown today, dropping guys in coverage, giving up touchdowns. That's something that can really affect you moving forward. So I'd love to see if Howie could bring in a slot corner and figure that out somehow.
Interesting. I mean, I definitely I could definitely see that. They do have, right? They have Bradley Roby that they expect to come back along with Justin Evans at some point. Adam, is there a name out there that people should be focused on if it's going to be either coverage linebacker or slot corner? Anybody that comes to mind?
See, the Bills are looking for coverage linebackers with Matt Milano out.
Yeah, they should be.
Look at their own guys, but they're also looking at coverage linebackers. Those guys are hard to find. It'd be a good one. Is Jordan Hicks. He got a restructured. He took a pay cut on a 1-year deal to come back. Now I know they won today. They're 4-4, but losing Kirk Cousins to a serious injury. They think it is, by the way. So it's serious injury. So I don't know what they're going to do with quarterback. Jaron Hall is a kid who clearly wasn't ready to play. He's a 5th-round pick. So they have to look. I just wonder if Jordan Hicks will become available. We'll have to see over the next 24 hours. But what you typically look at is teams that know that they're not playing for anything right now. They know they're out of it. So the bottom run teams, that's where you find some pretty good value. But remember, the Eagles have already given up 2 draft picks.
Right.
They feel they're going to get probably in the neighborhood of 4 compensatory picks to help negate that issue.
All right. We'll see. Did you play with Jordan Hicks, Clay? I'm trying to go back in my Eagles. No, you did not.
No,
okay.
Missing by a couple.
All right. That would be full circle for him coming back to the team.
Yeah, any team. Yeah. I'm interested to see what the Vikings do because this is an incredible win, dominant win. Do they stand pat? They're 4-4. See, this is the situation with these teams that are hovering around that last playoff spot. Do they stand pat or do they start moving players?
Yeah, that's a good question. And one that will be answered by Tuesday at 4:00. And we'll, of course, have that all covered on Inside the Birds. That is going to wrap it up and do it. Obviously, in about 5 minutes, it becomes Dallas week here in Philadelphia as we move past this win with the Cowboys up on deck. And it's going to be a great week for content, Dallas related versus Eagles content here on the Inside the Birds platform. We look forward to bringing it to you. That's going to do it for Inside the Birds post-game live. Want to thank our sponsors and friends, My Bookie, Hello Fresh, PHL Sports Nation, Sky Motor Cars, and of course Jimmy Hyden doing a great job in production. Thank you for watching Inside the Birds post-game live. For Adam Caplan and not Greg Cosell, we're going to call him Clay Harbor, that guy who was on The Bachelor. I'm Geoff Mosher. You've been watching Inside the Birds post-game live. Thank you.
Oh,